It had been 50 rotations since the Federation's flagship, Protector, had gone missing. Its last reported position was near the edge of Federation space, right on the frontier of unexplored wild space. The ship had reported detecting an unidentified vessel of an unknown configuration and was going to move in for a standard seize and investigate mission. That was the last transmission ever received from the Protector. Multiple search party fleets were sent, sweeping dozens of systems, starting with the closest ones to its last reported position and slowly expanding outward, searching system by system, yet coming up empty every time. Eventually, they officially declared the Protector lost in space and called off the search. The disappearance was somewhat of a mystery for a while, having no leads save for the unidentified vessel of an unknown configuration. We knew they were going to investigate, but the truth is, we had no idea what had happened. That is until about 5 rotations ago. A small scout ship located a single escape pod from the Protector about 50 light years from the Protector's last known position. It held a single occupant, Commander Zerp, the Protector's first officer. He had put himself in stasis, likely due to the lack of enough rations to last long enough. The scout ship revived Commander Zerp and brought him here to my base. Initially, I was excited to debrief him, but he was quite literally too scared to speak, save for some muttering of a symbol. That was 4 rotations ago, and every day I waited in anticipation for him to be ready to debrief, and every day he broke down halfway through his first sentence. Today, though, today was different. Today was the day he finally recovered enough to speak. Finally, the mystery would be solved. The analyst spoke into the recorder, date rotation 155, year 1011, Central Federation calendar. He then motioned to Commander Zerp, who sheepishly leaned forward and began in a quiet, almost whisper. It was a standard speak into the recorder. Please, the analyst cut him off, and start with the date. I shifted in my seat, impatient but trying to hold myself together. The analyst was just doing their job. Commander Zerp began again. The date was rotation 105, year 1011, Central Federation calendar. We had detected a small vessel of unknown configuration. It couldn't have been more than 50 zans long. Hell, the Protector was 1,000 zans long. The damn thing fit in our cargo bay. He paused for a second, collecting himself before continuing. It should have been a standard seize and investigate mission. Disable the ship, pull it in, scan and reverse engineer the technology, question the occupants, then release. Standard procedure. Well, disabling their ship was much harder than it should have been. That tiny ship was extremely maneuverable, which is somewhat common for a ship that size, I suppose, but the firepower. No ship that small should be able to pack that much of a punch. Zerp continued, his voice quivering slightly. It had the firepower of a ship half the size of the Protector, not 120 times smaller. Hell, the captain almost called the whole damn thing off. But we managed to disable them. Honestly, a few more volleys and I think the captain would have called it off. We brought it on board. And the breach team began to cut into the docking hatch. Again, it took them much longer than it normally would have with any other alien vessel we've come across. Eventually, we did manage to breach the door, and the boarding party entered. Zerp paused again, locking eyes with me, almost pleading to let him stop. I stood firm, and he continued. That team was among the first to die. Each team member was broadcasting what they saw, and I was watching from the bridge along with the captain. At first, we only saw glimpses of flash of what looked like some sort of creature. We only saw a glimpse, but it seemed to have 2 legs and walk upright. Of course. It was gone long before we could get a real good look at it. The team fanned out to cover more ground and clear the ship faster. That's when the first team member went offline. Their feed just cut out. No weapons fire, no screams, no indication of any danger. Just entered a room and the feed cut out. We sent another to check on them, and the same thing happened to them. The room was empty, dark, and quiet, with no signs of the missing team members, no signs of any aliens. Just a mostly empty room with a few consoles with flashing lights. But nothing. Only lost in a moment. He paused again, letting out a sigh that seemed to last an eternity before continuing. Then they sprang their trap. A lot happened all at once. The room with the first half of the team suddenly lit up. Heck, as far as we could tell, the whole ship very suddenly powered up and came to life. The second half of the team, we lost their feeds, but this time, they didn't just disappear. We heard shrieks and weapons fire, not just from the feeds of the first half of the team, but the surveillance system in the hangar bay housing the alien ship picked it up too. By the time the first half of the team reached the second half, It was too late, they were dead. But the aliens didn't even bother hiding that time. The remaining team members' feed cut out, but not before I saw one. For a second, I saw one of the aliens. It was bipedal, 2 arms, 2 legs. Covered in mostly black coverings, I'm assuming armor or clothing, and the skin was a pinkish tan. But the biggest thing I remember, the most terrifying thing, was the eyes. They were white with a blue ring and a black center, but they weren't on either side of the head like most sapient species. No, these were the eyes of a predator, and they were staring right at me. Well, technically at the poor soldier whose feed I was watching. But it felt like they were staring right at me. Commander Zerp stopped, taking several deep, almost labored breaths, as if he was reliving his worst nightmare. The feed cut out almost immediately, and suddenly the alien ship systems came back online. It shouldn't have. Every reading we had prior showed the alien ship as having been disabled. Then it opened fire. It opened fire on the ship it was housed in, which is insane to even think about. Anyway, the automated security systems in the hangar bay returned fire. It couldn't have been more than a few seconds, but then the alien ship exploded. It took out the hangar bay, communications, the FTL drive, and a good chunk of the surrounding decks. Luckily, the automated systems sealed the decks almost immediately after the explosion, so we didn't lose too much atmosphere, but the damage had been done. I decided to speak up. When we found and revived you, you kept mentioning something about a symbol. You weren't cognizant enough to elaborate, but a symbol. Zerp started. We found a piece of the alien's hull on an adjacent deck. It had a symbol on it. Could you recreate the symbol now? I asked. He nodded, and the tech handed him a pad and a writing utensil. It took the commander a moment, but then he handed me the pad. I looked down and saw the symbol. I didn't know what it meant, but it obviously seemed to hold some sort of significance to the bipedal aliens. In any case, it was our only lead. I handed the pad to my assistant. Load this into the main computer and have it analyzed. My assistant took the pad and exited the room, and I turned my attention back to Commander Zerp and motioned for him to continue. We thought it was over a very odd, normal file to end, but an end nonetheless, he sighed, but we couldn't have been more wrong. That's when things started to go wrong. Started, I asked, as if the whole incident up to that point had just been business as usual. Zerp looked at me again, nodding. It started with small tools going missing, a plasma torch gone from an engineering tech's equipment, an anomalous lock disappeared, a data rod missing from it. At first, we thought it was just incidents attributed to a fatigued crew. After all, the damage was extreme. And the crew was working non-stop to fix it. It made sense some tools might get misplaced. But then things started getting really weird. At first, the main computer's efficiency went down by 2%. At first, we attributed the efficiency decrease to the extra processing load it was taking on with the repairs and damage. Then, life support started malfunctioning. It didn't shut off, but rather changed the environmental settings. The oxygen levels decreased to 20%. The carbon dioxide levels rose to 0.5%. Nitrogen and some argon started replacing the helium, and the humidity decreased significantly. At first, we thought it was a computer glitch. But every time we set it back to Federation standard, it would go back to the same wrong setting within a few hours. Hell, we even tried restarting the main computer. After that, we thought it worked, as our readings were coming back normal. But we realized the computer sensors were lying to us, since we could feel no difference in the environment despite the computer telling us otherwise. A primal sense of fear started to form inside me, the kind where you know you are being watched by a predator. I knew where this story was going. After about a week, we figured out what was happening. Unfortunately, by then it was too late. It started after we got the FTL drive back online. The captain ordered an immediate return to the nearest Federation outpost. It should have been a cycle's trip to arrive, but after a cycle in FTL, the outpost was nowhere in sensor range. It didn't take long to realize we were off course. But not by some miscalculation. We were going in the opposite direction. After that, we started a detailed investigation into the ship's computer. That's when we finally realized what was happening. We found some footage from when the bipedal ship exploded. During the chaos, right before the explosion, about 5 of the bipeds escaped. They used the attack and explosion as a diversion and escaped into the protector. The captain ordered an immediate wiping of the computer and a full backup restore from before we encountered the aliens. Unfortunately, they were onto us. They didn't even try to hide their presence anymore. The computer went haywire. We watched helplessly as the computer pulled up, queried, and downloaded the database, every classified file, Every known species cultural index, every piece of data on that computer, pulled up and downloaded to a single location on Deck 5. So, the captain did the only thing we could do. He ordered a sweep of Deck 5, and for the bipeds to be captured or eliminated, Commander Zerp paused, taking a deep breath and locking eyes with me before continuing. The soldiers never even made it to Deck 5. The bipeds knew we were coming and ambushed the team en route. That's when they went on the offensive. They started taking the ship level by level. The crew members that didn't evacuate in time were knocked out by a single hit from their weapons. This point, the captain ordered the remaining crew to abandon ship. Somehow they knew and intercepted us on the way to the escape pods. The captain ordered us to push through and escape at all costs. None of us made it, I said, confused. Well, obviously you made it, I pointed out. No, General Commander Zerp replied. I made it the furthest, but as I was entering my escape pod. Commander Zerp took a deep breath. As I entered my escape pod, it grabbed me and pulled me back. It shoved me into the wall and looked at me directly in the eye. The eyes were so piercing, the whites, the blue ring, and the black dot in the middle. Honestly, General, I thought I was going to die. What happened? I asked. It held me there for a moment, then spoke in Zalarian. How they knew to speak my home language was beyond me, but I'll never forget what it said. What did it say? Well, Sir Zerp began. He had a message for you, me, I asked, confused and admittedly a little terrified. Well, command as a whole, Zerp explained. The Bipe said, we don't know why you attacked us, but tell your superiors it won't happen again. And then it shoved me into the escape pod and ejected it. Sir Zerp continued. They took our standard seize and investigate protocol as an act of aggression, and I asked, urging him to continue. Well, sir, at first I took the Bipe's words as a warning to not do that again, to stay away from their ships. But, well, you see, get to the point, Commander, I ordered. I knew where Zerp was going with this, but I had hoped I was wrong. Well, you see, I've had a lot of time to think about this. Their ship, at least based on the data we received and from what I can make of it, well, there should have been more than 5. Only 5 made it out, but the ship they ran could have easily, comfortably had at least double that. My heart sank. I think? Well, I know they took our actions as an act of aggression, but if I'm right, I think we may have accidentally killed some of them too. So if I'm right, they don't just think we are the aggressive ones, but their words weren't a warning to stay away, but a warning of retribution, sir, he said, his voice starting to shake. They are coming. By all accounts, the next 3 rotations were anything but ordinary. Supply ships and patrols came in and out. Commander Zerp was transferred to command to reinstate his testimony and give as much information on the bipedal threat as possible. I'd recommended an immediate mobilization, activate the reserves, increase warship production, retrofit every fleet vessel to wartime standards. Command accepted my recommendation, but when asked what sector to mobilize the fleet in, I was at a loss. Even Commander Zerp had no idea where these bipeds were from. We had no idea where they would come from, how many ships they could muster for an invasion, or if our assessment of an invasion was correct. But if a single tiny ship and 5 of these bipeds managed to take out the Federation flagship and a crew of over 500 Federation crew members, and that was knowing nothing about us before the encounter, now they knew just about everything about us from the Protector's database. Not to mention, they most likely have plenty of time to reverse engineer, analyze, and figure out our most advanced technology. Meanwhile, we knew nothing of them, other than Commander Zerp's experiences and their symbol, of course. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep. In retrospect, we should have seen this coming long before the Protector went missing. The standard Seize and Investigate was one of the Federation's most controversial standard missions. Opponents against it noted it was highly aggressive and violated the rights of the species whom it was being done to. Advocates for it never really had a good counter to that, but mentioned it was necessary for the safety of the Federation. Besides, the Federation was the most advanced alliance in the known galaxy. Even if other alien species were unhappy with the policy, they could never stand up to the Federation in a meaningful way. It was foolish arrogance. It was only a matter of time before we ran into a species more powerful than us, and a standard Seize and Investigate was not exactly the kind of first impression you wanted to make. In fact, I had even made that exact objection at the Academy all those years ago, back when I was very much against the standard Seize and Investigate. Of course, over time, I had wised up and realized it was a necessary evil for the good of the Federation. But now I realized too late that my younger self was the wise one. This policy was our undoing, it was just a matter of time. But after 3 rotations, they didn't come, and there was no invasion. I just started to relax, and things were starting to return to normal, save for a small fleet protecting each planet and a few warships stationed at my outpost. The date was rotation 158, year 1011, Central Federation calendar. I was just about to end my shift when I got called up to the situation room. Sir, the ensign said, motioning me over to her station, we have detected a small fleet of 12 vessels of unknown configuration heading right for us. My heart started to sink. It's just a few light years out, but they are coming in fast. We have, at most, a few hours before arrival. The automated outposts were unable to identify the ships, but we did get a single match on the symbol, but the symbol file is classified. Without a word, I walked over to the console and inputted my command code. The image came up, and I froze. That feeling had come over me again, the primal fear of being watched by a predator who had you in their sights. But this time, it wasn't a story. This time, it wasn't something that was happening to someone else. This time, it was real, and it was happening now. Sir, what should we do? The ensign asked. Send a priority message to command. Tell them. Tell them it has begun. The communications officers quickly started sending a string of messages to command, but it didn't take long before one of them stopped and turned back to me. Sir, we are being jammed. Sir, what do we do? My next in command asked me. I hadn't taken my eyes off that symbol, the one recognized symbol, the symbol the Protector crew had found on that alien ship's hull. The one connection we had to the bipedal aliens. But this wasn't one ship, it was 12, and all of them had this symbol on it. I still didn't know what the symbol meant, but at this point, it didn't really matter. Even so, it was all I could do to stare at the screen, to stare at that symbol. The Federation's day of reckoning had come. We didn't know much about our enemy, but we knew the symbol by which they identified their ships, Terran Alliance. Sir, what do we do? My next in command asked me again in a more urgent tone. I was frozen in fear. For the first time in my career as a general, I did not know what to do. The fear, the uncertainty, the realization that we were facing a threat we knew nothing about, all of it paralyzed me. And in that moment, staring at that symbol, I knew that whatever happened next would change the fate of the Federation forever. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says we will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.